I want to welcome you to our regular Saturday afternoon sponsorship workshop here at the Pompano Beach group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Jim and I am an alcoholic. If you haven't been with us before, this workshop goes for approximately 34 to 36 weeks. And during this workshop we take a look at sponsorship as what it is and what it is not. Then we spend a lot of time on the big book finding out where everything is and how it all ties together. And then we go to the steps and we learn how to teach the steps, one step at a time. And following that, we spend a couple of weeks on the traditions and how to teach the traditions. It's a long commitment, but the purpose of this workshop is to equip us to be more effective and more confident sponsors, enable us to carry the message which God intends for us to carry. The 12th step tells us we're to carry this message to other alcoholics, and we learn in this workshop how to do that in the most effective way. It's an hour and a half long. We take a 10-minute break at the halfway point. Each session is recorded. If you miss a session, you should be able to get a tape of the one you missed, so you can, if you're that serious about it, and listen to it and be sure you keep caught up. When we get into the steps, we cover a lot of material in each session, and since it's the steps we're talking about, it's all pretty critical stuff. Anyway, we conduct this workshop as an AA meeting with an abbreviated format in the interest of saving time. So please join me in a moment of silent meditation and we'll say the Serenity Prayer together. Thank you. Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. And Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other. They may solve their common problem and help others recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. And there are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. And AA is not allied to any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. Not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober, help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. If we have anyone who is visiting from out of town, would like to announce their name to us so we can get to know you. Anyone coming from other groups who hasn't been here with us before?
Hi, I'm Whitney. I'm an alcoholic.
What's your name?
Whitney.
Whitney. Hey, how are you? We're glad to see you. Anyone else?
My name is Art, alcoholic.
Hey, Art.
Art, happy to have you here.
Thank you.
My name's Mike. It's the first time at this meeting.
Mike and Art and Whitney. Anyone else?
I'm an alcoholic. My name is Ricky. I'm a member of this group, but I haven't been here yet to this meeting.
Hey, Ricky.
Hi, Ricky. All right, let's give our new friends. Oh,
I'm
another.
Arthur, and I'm an alcoholic. This is the first time to this meeting.
Hey, Art.
Good. Art. All right, let's give our new friends a hand. We're really glad to have you with us. We hope that this is something which you find valuable and that you would like to join us every Saturday afternoon here as we study how to be better and more effective sponsors. Customary and traditional in the Pompano Beach group to read a portion of Chapter 5 from the Big Book, and Jonah's going to do that.
Thank you, sir. I'm a grateful alcoholic member of this group, and it's Jonah. Hey, this is how it works. Chapter 5 out of the Big Book.
Hold on just a second, Jonah. One thing I'd like to mention to all of you is that when you are sponsoring people, it's a very, very good idea to have them read along with Chapter 5 when it's being read, or at the very least to listen carefully, because that's truly the guts of the program. And what we do here is we like to silently read as the Chapter 5 is being read. Kind of gives us the idea of doing it. Let's do that, please.
Just one quick question. Would you recommend this meeting for sponsors, sponsees?
What?
Would you recommend this workshop for sponsees or not?
Of course. Half the people who have attended my workshops, I've been doing this for 15 years, and half at least the people who have been going through the workshops have been people who are just starting out, because we cover everything that they're going to need to know. Yes.
You said that when you first get a new sponsee, you give them the book and you tell them to read this book.
Yes.
Is that the whole book or the
Yes.
first 164 pages?
I'd like to refer you, since you've asked, let's go to page 94. 95. Go to page 95.
Read this book, I see it.
We give them the book, and we ask them to read the book. Go to page 96. At next to the last paragraph. At our second meeting with the man, and he has read this book and says that he is ready to go forward with the program of recovery. And why do you suppose we would tell him to read the whole book?
I don't know.
Because it was written for the newcomer. Everything in that book was designed and pointed toward the person out in Pacoima and Grand Rapids and Baton Rouge who did not have an AA group and no acknowledged alcoholics around them. To pick up this book and be able, by reading the book, to do two things initially. One, to break down the walls of denial through identification with the stories and with all the information in the first part of the book, and two, to bring them hope that they too can recover. Now, the way they did that was to write a book in which they set forth their experiences in recovery, how they recovered, what happened to them to get them into recovery, and how it has turned out for them. And the whole book was designed specifically for that one purpose, to go out and accomplish what they could not do face-to-face, one-on-one, with only 3 small groups with about 100 people total. And the book was designed specifically for that. Every story in the back of the book is another strong possibility for identification and to bring a message of hope. There's another, I see you're still doubtful.
Well, that's not the case nowadays. There's thousands of meetings. There's thousands of people that speak in meetings and give their opinion of where they were to experience strength and hope.
Nevertheless, nevertheless, that's what the book was written for, and that's the purpose of the book. And if you have your new person read the entire book, what it does is give them a big kickstart toward the first step.
I sponsor a lot of people. I've got over 8 years sober. I haven't read the whole book. And I venture to say, the people that I sponsor, I tell them to read the first 164 pages. Most of them don't. To get a sponsee to read the whole book, I don't think I'd ever have a sponsee right now if I told them to read the whole book. Now, I can say, okay, until you read the book, don't call me. You'll never call me.
There's a gentleman to your right. What are you doing right now?
Read the book.
The whole book.
No,
Have you run away yet?
no.
Okay. My experience is that they will read the book if I make a major point of it. And furthermore, that the person who is willing to read the whole book is a person who has a tremendous interest in getting sober. And that when I ask them to read the book, and they do, I quit worrying about whether they're ready or not. It saved wasting an awful lot of time with people who are nothing but tire kickers. That's my read on it. You certainly are entitled to your experience, and I honor your experience. So, but I have to bring to you what I believe and what I've experienced. I've taken over 2,000 people through the steps in 36 and a half years. And what I bring to you here is a distillation of that experience plus what the big book tells us. And that's the whole purpose of this. But I welcome anyone else that's experienced at any time, please. This is not designed to be a one-way street by any means. This is a workshop. And there are many people who agree with you that you assign certain parts of the big book to a newcomer and ask them to read that much, hope they read it, and then see what you can do from there on. Personally, I find that the other way works best for me. Yes?
I've read the big book once each year, and you actually forced me to read it a 5th time in 4 years when you told me that the big book doesn't tell us not to drink. And I listened to what you had to say, and I had to check it out for myself, so therefore I had to read the entire book again, looking specifically for where it says, don't drink.
You didn't find it, did you?
No, sir.
Of course not, because it's not in there.
I seem to have remembered reading it the first time, but like I say, you actually, in your own gentle way, forced me to read it an extra time just to try to find that out.
Well, you know, I'm not quite sure why, but I really enjoy the fact that somebody is validating what I've been saying. The big book never once says don't drink, because that's not the solution which is offered in the big book. What it tells us is, in the doctor's opinion, that we can never safely drink alcohol again. But it also tells us that alcohol is a symptom of the problem. And the solution which is offered is to find a power greater than ourselves which will solve our problem. And that's what the steps are all geared toward. To go from a place of rebellion and defiance and denial to a place of acceptance and surrender and obedience. And it's when we do that, by working the steps, that we recover. Anything else anyone would like to bring up before we get started? I'd like to ask you to think back. Oh,
Yeah, I'm
Roy.
an alcoholic. My name's Roy.
Roy.
You know, I find it sometimes when I hear that, when I hear people say stuff, well, that's not in the big book. And I hear people say that the vision for you, more shall be revealed to us, is the most misunderstood page in the big book. I find that funny, because I find it funny that somebody can think that just by going through the steps and still drinking, still relapsing, that it's working. I don't know. What does it mean here when it says, but if you really and truly want to quit drinking liquor for good and all? What does that mean? I mean, does that mean quit drinking liquor for good and all?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I came here at first, to see if that was possible.
Of course.
I don't know, but I mean, I don't want to put out a message that it's okay to drink and go to meetings.
Well, that was what Dr. Bob was saying, right?
Yeah.
In the last page of his story.
Mm-hmm.
And he meant exactly what he said. Go back to the 3rd chapter and it tells you exactly what he means. All right, guys, we're back on the record. I would like to have you all do something.
All right.
The next time you're sitting in a meeting where the secretary asks for a show of hands of those who would be willing to sponsor, if there are 30 people in there, you might get 4 hands. And you ask yourself, whoa, what's going on here? The biggest problem in AA today is the lack of good sponsorship. That's why we have these workshops. People are afraid to do it. They don't think they know enough, or they've been told they don't have to, or they're too lazy, or they're too full of self. Whatever it is, lack of good sponsorship is the biggest problem in our fellowship today. Remember that AA was founded on one alcoholic working with another. That's the basic idea of the whole fellowship. We gather together because in the unity of the fellowship we are like those people in a lifeboat who never would have gathered together but for the storm that sunk their boat. And because we are in a lifeboat together, we sink or swim together. And the unity of the fellowship is determinative of our personal sobriety. But there are a lot of factors that go into that, not the least of which is the fact that within the fellowship we find those with whom we are going to be able to carry the message. When you come to a meeting, if you treat the meeting as an opportunity for service, that is an opportunity to meet and to begin to work with somebody who needs your help, you'll find that all of a sudden your whole attitude about meetings changes. And there's a little switch in your head. Turn the switch to on. The minute you do that, the people who need help will see it. They'll feel it and they'll come to you. Try that. It'll work. In 24 hours, you'll have somebody coming asking you for help. Find a place in a meeting where you usually sit. Share from the big book in the meetings. When you come in, if there's somebody who is sitting by themselves, sit down and talk to them. Ask them how you do it. Half the time you're going to find somebody who's in pain and needs to talk. Take AA meetings and put aside AA meetings as a social gathering and treat them as a spiritual experience which you do not want to miss. And that will change everything in the way, in your attitude toward what you're doing. I want to refer one more time to Dr. Bob's story, page 180, please. The last paragraph on that page, 3 lines. I spend a great deal of time passing on what I have learned to others who want and need it badly. I do it for 4 reasons. 1, sense of duty. 2, it is a pleasure. 3, because in so doing I'm paying my debt to the man who took time to pass it on to me. 4, because every time I do it, I take out a little more insurance for myself against a possible slip. Now turn back, please, to page 189. I beg your pardon. Page 89, please. Here's the rock bottom truth of it. This is the first page of the 7th chapter, first paragraph. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spot of our lives. And every bit of that is true. One other thing I'd like to challenge you on is this. There's much talk these days and much practice, I suppose you could say, revolving around the concept or the idea that somehow or another the big book is outmoded, that it really is the product of some middle-aged or older white guys sitting around beating their gums, smoking big cigars, and coming up with some stuff that they thought might sell a book. And that modern thought and modern advances have nullified much of what they wrote. Certainly, there is every reason to believe, they say, that as experience grows, we get to take that experience and change what we find in the book. If it doesn't fit our experience, we change it. That means then that we are taking a position that there are parts of the big book which are no longer valid. or perhaps were not even true to begin with. And I want you to think about that. Who decides that that's so? Where do we draw the line? What part of the big book do you safely ignore? You may come to the conclusion that you better get back to basics and stay there, because we're dealing here not with philosophy, not with some kind of treatise which was written to make somebody rich, not with the product of a PhD applicant who has written his theses. The big book tells us this, that spiritual life is not a theory. We have to live it. And what we have been given here in the big book is a way of doing that, which worked for those who wrote it, and has continued to work for millions of others since then, and continues to work to this day. Now, if you're going to take seriously the idea that someone, many someones, have entrusted to you the opportunity to bring them a message which will save their lives, you may want to think very seriously before you deviate from what has been shown to work. Because the moment we do that, we're not only taking a chance with our own sobriety, but we may be seriously injuring another human being. And we need to be very, very careful about that. These are things I want you to cogitate. And many of you have been brought into AA and have worked programs which may not be consistent with the big book. And as we go through the big book and the steps, we're going to be dealing precisely with what is written here. I want you to think about whether you wish to take the chance that something new or something different may just possibly be right, or do you wish to go with and to teach that which is proven to be right? And I think the answer will be obvious to you as we go along. Now then, I want to address some of the things which have grown up in this cult of sponsorship. Sponsorship was not mentioned anywhere in the literature of AA until 1947 in an article which Bill Wilson wrote. Let me see, I forget the page. It's in Language of the Heart. I'll give you the page in just a second. Page 52. I want you to notice the context within which sponsorship is mentioned here. Page 52, Language of the Heart. If you don't have this book, I strongly recommend you get it. It may be the second most important book in the literature. This is a collection of all of the articles which Bill Wilson wrote for the Grapevine from 1944 through 1969. And it contains much material you will find nowhere else, including a number of extremely important articles which he wrote, covering every subject from honesty to humility to the 11th step, to the language of the heart, to emotional sobriety, to fear. And each of these articles is a masterpiece in itself. Now let's look on page 52. This article was written in 1947. The first full paragraph, the second sentence. More and more, AA groups are adopting the idea of, quote, sponsorship, end quote. Each newcomer is assigned a reasonably stable AA member whose ward he becomes during his brief period of introduction to our way of life. The sponsor helps make hospital arrangements, takes his man there, visits him frequently, and sees that he is visited by other AAs whose experience might be especially helpful. Hence, a prospect so handled has received a powerful shot of AA and a good preview of what our society is like before he ever goes to a meeting. Now, you notice that the sponsorship duties really revolved around the fact that somebody coming in the door who's sick, sore, and wounded and needs hospitalization or detox or whatever has somebody assigned by the group to help him deal with this problem. Since 1947, however, this business of sponsorship has grown and grown until it has a life of its own, and it is now surrounded by a ton of mythology and ideas, concepts, belief systems, many of which we need to examine critically if we wish to be effective sponsors. There used to be a picture of a lady right up here, and I'm sure she'll be back after they paint the room. Her name is Marty Mann. First lady in AA, first woman. Interesting how that came about. She had inquired of Bill Wilson about getting sober, and Bill was in the process of writing the initial draft of the Big Book, which was then published in multi-liths, kind of like mimeograph. I have a copy of it. It's a very interesting document. Now, this is before the editorial committees got hold of it and changed a lot of stuff. But Bill sold that original multi-lith first draft for $3.50. And the promise being that if you bought that for $3.50, you would get a hardcover book when it was published. And of course, this is what he wrote back to Marty Mann, and he said, if you send me $3.50, I'll send you a copy of the Big Book draft, which in fact happened. So Marty had the original Big Book draft, and later she received the hard copy. She was one of the 77 who received a hard copy after the first edition, first printing, came off the press. After that, the books sat around the warehouse. Nobody wanted them, nobody bought them, until the Saturday Evening Post and Liberty articles came out, and then they went right out the door. By the way, if you have one of those these days, they're worth about $8,000 if they're in halfway decent condition. Marty Mann, therefore, became the first woman member of the newly named Alcoholics Anonymous. How do you suppose she got sober?
She had a guy sponsor.
She couldn't have a man help her, could she?
Yes.
She really shouldn't even be reading that book. It was written by all men. Of course, the whole idea is ridiculous, isn't it? Marty Mann was helped by men in the program. She recovered. She went on to help many more, men and women. Nowhere in the Big Book, of course, does it specify that only men can sponsor men and only women can sponsor women. This is a myth. It has absolutely no reality at all. It appears in one place in the literature in a book called Living Sober, which on its first page states unequivocally that it has nothing to do with the Big Book or the steps, that it is a collection of certain practical ideas that many alcoholics, they say, have used in recovery. It has absolutely nothing to do with the program of recovery as contained in the Big Book or the 12 steps, except on some tangential basis. Where is it written, except for Living Sober, that only men can sponsor men and only women can sponsor women? Now, we say, well, wait a minute, that makes a certain amount of sense, because after all, women tend to be more in tune with other women. And so therefore, really women should sponsor women because they're going to have more in common and all that stuff. And of course, men will have more in common with men. But see, that's nothing but a rationalization, isn't it? Because the real basis of this so-called rule is fear. And the fear revolves around the differences between the sexes and the temptations which could arise as a result of the sponsorship situation. And there is a lot of truth in that, in the sense that those of you who've done a lot of sponsorship know that there is indeed a significant amount of transference and some dependency which results at first, at least, in the sponsorship situation. But that does not mean that the relationship is wrong or not in accordance with God's will. It only means that it's another factor that needs to be taken into consideration. If I'm sponsoring a man and I allow him to become dependent upon me, I've done him a terrible disservice. Equally so if I'm sponsoring a woman. The fear being that this will result in many illegal, immoral liaisons is one which has some basis in common sense. But the fact is that it all comes back to certain spiritual principles. If my motives are right, and if I am truly being helpful, and I am bringing the steps to a woman, and everything is kept on that basis, there's no danger. Nothing's going to happen except that woman, if she works the steps, is going to recover, just as a man would. So we have to be very careful about accepting these kinds of things as being set in stone. There's a mythology that goes around that your sponsor has to be your best friend. Well, every once in a while we get real lucky, and we're sponsoring somebody, and it turns out that there's a real beautiful psychic connection, and they do become an excellent friend. Most of the time that doesn't happen, nor is it by any means necessary. There's another myth that floats around, that there are no teachers in AA. Where in the hell does that come from? It's directly contrary to common sense. If I have something I want to impart to you, how will I do it best? I'll do it best if I'm able to teach you what to do. There are even some groups today which go back, hark way back into the dark ages of 20, 30 years ago, who in their preamble to a meeting always say that the main purpose of an AA group is the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. Because that's the truth. And in here, you'll hear me use the term teach a lot. If it offends you, I'm sorry about that. I want you to understand what I mean by that. A teacher imparts knowledge. The knowledge which we have gained by virtue of our working the steps and having studied the book and having had a lot of experience. That knowledge is what we impart to the new person. Our sponsee is to receive the benefit of our experience and our knowledge, and therefore we teach it to them. But we also find that the steps, there's a lot of work to be done in the steps. And to teach somebody how to do that work is a big part of a sponsor's job. There's another myth that's going around all the time. Can't have a relationship for the first year. And that has a certain amount of common sense ring to it, I suppose. But it's the same old thing of avoidance, isn't it? Yeah. The most important thing about that is that it absolutely denies the Big Book. The Big Book teaches us how we are to deal with sexual relationships. And not one word in it has anything to do with 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years. In fact, to even mention the fact that somehow there's a magic cutoff of 1 year is so ridiculous there's no point even thinking about it. There are people who at the end of 5 years are no more capable of having a reasonable relationship than they were when they first walked in the door. And there are others who within 6 weeks or 2 months have enough spiritual foundation under them that they can deal with it. And what about the people who are married? What do? You tell a married guy, get rid of your wife for a year? Tell your wife and kids to beat it. You can't have a relationship with them. Why do we have chapter 9, the family afterward? What's the purpose of that? You see, there's some surface logic to stuff, but baked down deep inside it's not logical at all. I remember the day at the choral room in South Dade when I went to a birthday meeting, and there was a lady who was sponsoring another lady who was a beautiful young woman, and I'd seen this young woman get up from the back of the room and walk forward, and she was sitting with her husband and 2 little girls. And this sponsor got up and she was going to give this young lady her 1-year medallion. And she said, "Oh, I am so proud of her. I told her she had to stay completely away from her family and have no relationship for a year. And so she did. And now she gets her medallion and now she can go home." And at that point, I could not resist it. I stood up and asked her why she had done such a thing, to deprive a husband and 2 children of the love and affection of their mother and their wife for a year. And I asked her, "Have you not read the big book? Have you not read chapter 9? How could you do such a cruel thing?" And she came all unglued, and about half the people in the courtroom came unglued because they thought I was wrong. They were applauding her because she was such a wonderful sponsor. And I was sick. Utter cruelty, and absolutely contrary to the big book. You know, as far as these sex relations are concerned, the big book is consistent from one end to the other. Let's see how it works out. We start out with Bill's story. In Bill's story, he gives us the rule in its barest form. He says, simple but not easy, a price had to be paid. He says it means turning in all things to the Father of light who presides over us all, in all things. Go to the 3rd step. What do we do in the 3rd step? We offer ourselves to God to do with us and to build with us as He will. No reservations. We don't say, except, gee, don't make me have a relationship for a year, or let me be freed from my family for a year. We, without reservation, turn our life and our will over to God. Do we mean it? Or are we just simply beating our gums and trying to satisfy a sponsor? Go to the 4th step. The 4th section of the 4th step is the sex inventory. What does it tell us? It tells us that our sex powers are God-given and therefore good. They're just not to be used lightly or selfishly. But we are certainly not to hate or loathe them. And then a little later it says that if we have doubts, in our morning meditation we ask God what we should do about each specific matter, and that the right answer will come if we want it. And then it tells us we as members of Alcoholics Anonymous do not judge the sex life of another person. We leave that up to God. And then finally it tells us that sex is very troublesome. What we're going to do is we're going to seek to be helpful to others, and that this will quiet the imperious urge, when to fail to do that would mean heartache. It also tells us that in our sex matters we turn in all of them to God and seek from Him knowledge of His will for us. Yes?
I'm Arthur and I'm an alcoholic.
Yes, sir.
When you go back, you were mentioning Marty Mann being the first woman. It's a question I've had quite a few years. Why is it every meeting I go to, or most every meeting I go to, get a handful of women and the rest are men? I just can't understand why women, there's got to be as many women alcoholics as there are men. But
oh, absolutely.
But I don't understand that part. Why women? Is there fear, or I'd like to get some answer on that. I mean,
I don't
great
know.
that we're all together. We're equal that way, but I just can't understand why is it men come in the rooms more than women. Maybe you have an answer, or somebody.
I don't have an answer. There are some meetings where there is a preponderance of women. Why that should be, I don't know. But for the most part, our workshops, see, one of the biggest problems, aside from the overall problem of lack of good sponsorship, there is a huge lack of good sponsorship with women. I don't know why. It's just a fact. And this isn't to pick on anybody, it's just a fact. Certainly there must be as many women alcoholics as there are men. Perhaps women do not reach as deep a bottom. Maybe many women are being enabled in their homes by their families or their husbands or whatever, or maybe they don't have the same desperation. I can't tell you the answer, but I know you're right. That there are generally, in every meeting, there are generally fewer women than there are men. I can tell you this, though, for a damn well fact. Women make marvelous sponsors, marvelous members of AA, acquire a tremendous spiritual recovery, and are absolutely essential to our fellowship. And some of the greatest, strongest, most spiritual members of Alcoholics Anonymous are women. And boy, thank God that they're here. Thank God they're here. Yes, Emily.
I just want to say that since I've been in the program, which is not even quite 2 months, I don't know if way back when this whole thing was fueled that men shouldn't sponsor women, and maybe it sparked up a whole bunch of new meetings that were just women-only meetings, and that's where the women tend to go, because through word of mouth. Because when I first came in, I had a woman instantly tell me, don't talk to the men. She's been recovered for 9 years, and she told me, don't talk to men. Men will try to, and I'm thinking, I'm a 30-year-old woman. I've talked to men all my life. I think I know when a man's hitting on me, when someone's sincerely trying to help me out, And it offended me. I was like, I'm not a moron, I'm not drunk right now,
Emily, when they stop hitting on you, that's when you're in trouble.
I don't know. I prefer not to go to these all-women meetings, because it's like, oh, women should be with just women. And I've, right now to this day, have received more invaluable understanding from the men that I've met here in Florida. So
yes, dear.
I'm very thankful.
Thank you, Emily. Yeah.
I think I might have an answer. I've been to other fellowships, other 12-step programs like OA, FA, Food Addicts, OA, EA, Emotions Anonymous, which are all stepchildren of the original 12 steps. And for some reason, the women either go to all women's meetings. I'm not speaking for myself, but
No, we know about you, honey. You're always here. Good.
I'm obviously here, but a lot of women, and the women that sponsored me in the last 15 or 20 years, tend to go to other 12-step programs like Food Addicts, OA. They tend to use other substances, have other.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right about that, and certainly with Al-Anon. Most of them, people in Al-Anon, the women sit around and talk about my alcoholic this, my alcoholic that.
They don't really like being alcoholics, talking about it.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Oh, I was just going to say that for myself, when I first came in, my picture of an alcoholic was the Skid Row bum, and I was actually embarrassed about going in. I walked past the door and then went back and kind of peeked in to see who was there, and I think a lot of women have a misconception of who the people in Alcoholics Anonymous are, too, that hesitate to go there and just continue to suffer. Just my experience.
Yeah, and you know what? There are a whole bunch of ex-Skid Row bums sitting all around you, and they cleaned up real good, too.
Yes, they did.
And this is not something which is unique to men, believe me. Not at all. There was a gal I sponsor was in here speaking a few weeks ago. You might have been here on a Saturday night. And she said, when I was out there, even the homeless people called the cops on me. Yes, Mark.
Hi, my name is Mark. I always heard that the women are more emotional than men. So it's not important what's my opinion about it. It's important how women are thinking about understand. I think that during our alcoholic years we had a lot of bad relationships, and I think that there were a lot of women just scared to get into relationships, so they are trying to keep away from men. That's all. That's what it is.
Well, I think what we need to look at is this, Mark, and it's a good point. Once we have achieved a place of spiritual fitness, we can do anything that normal people can do, so long as our motives are right. And that certainly would include being helpful to members of the opposite sex. That's the way it actually works out in practice. At first, of course, it can be a very dicey situation, no doubt about it.
Yeah, but before they reach the spiritual point, they jump into something.
Okay.
Jim, I have-
Thank you, Mark. Okay, yes, dear. One more.
I'm a teacher. I'm not working right now, but I'm a teacher. I've taught high school, and I've also chaired ALA-T meetings in schools and high schools. And there you get a cross-section of, it's a co-ed thing. For some reason or other, that those women, they haven't had, like Mark said, they haven't had the negative experiences yet with men. So their minds are, they're open-minded and they're fresh. But some, like you said, some women have had very negative experiences, and that's how it's
Good, thank you. Well, I think we're going to find as we go through this that most of our aberrant behavior and thinking is a direct product of fear. And we're going to find that fear is our enemy, perhaps our only enemy. And that the bottom line around here is that as our faith grows, our fears recede. And that faith and fear cannot live in the same house. And as we go through the steps, we're going to be on a path of spiritual growth, which means the growth of faith and the willingness to put faith into action, which means to trust God. All right, let's see. I guess we're not going to. Oh, did we make any money? We got to pay a rent around here. Holy cow! I would tell you that I'm self-supporting through your contributions, but you wouldn't put anything in the basket then.
Gotta get you sober and everything, and but I also do believe that from my experience, and I recommend it to anybody, watch a real crack addict. If he thinks he can have a relationship or she can have a relationship in the first few months, I've seen many try, and I've seen many go. And I don't know why that is.
Well, I don't think.
I'm sort of suspicious that they might take a little focus off of their program and their sobriety. That's the way I see it.
I don't know anything about crack personally, but I sponsor a lot of people who do have the problem, and I know it's probably got to be the toughest, by far and away the toughest nut to crack. And there's the constant threat of the mind saying you can get away with it, and nobody will ever know. And it's a diabolical stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, until we achieve spiritual fitness and maintain it for a while, trying to have a healthy sex relationship is damn near impossible. There's no doubt that that's true. Okay, guys, is anybody who needs to pick up a chip today? Okay, and let's see, the Secretary's report would be that everything on the wall is for you to examine and use, but we don't have anything left, so I have to let that go. Please do not throw anything over the balcony, even each other. Even each other. We don't want to dent the cars below. Okay, let's close the meeting.
Can I do an announcement?
Huh? Oh, announcement, yeah.
John, I'm an alcoholic and a crackhead. First, I have a small theory and a large crack problem. Cocaine and sex are very related. Yes, they are very related. And whatever you want to think about that, that's another thing. But we are painting tonight, and I'm coordinating it. I'm not controlling it because I don't control anything anymore.
Good.
We are painting this room. We're starting at 11. If anybody wants to come by, the room is buying pizzas, salad, brownies, sodas, all the good stuff, water. And we're just going to clear it out, and we're just going to do the big room. If you want to come by and at least help us eat. Or push a roller for a little while.
It sounds like a great social occasion.
After the 10 o'clock meeting.
They're good, thanks, man. All right, let's close the meeting, guys.
Thanks.
What a great turnout. This is wonderful. I'm so happy to see all of you here. You taking names, Gina, or what? Let this circle represent the unity of our fellowship. Let's have a moment of silence for those who are still suffering, and then we'll say the Lord's Prayer together. And in our workshop, we don't say anything after we say amen. Thank you. Lord's Prayer. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you all so much for being here. See you next week. We'll get back into sponsor. Page 58. Go ahead, Jonah.
Rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly fought our path. Those who do not recover are people who cannot or will not completely give themselves to the simple program. Usually men and women who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. There are such unfortunates. They are not at fault. They seem to have been born that way. They are naturally incapable of grasping and developing the manner of living which demands rigorous honesty. Their chances are less than average. There are those, too, who suffer from grave emotional and mental disorders, but many of them do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. Our stories disclose in a general way what we used to be like, what happened, and what we are like now. If you have decided you want what we have and are willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to take certain steps. As some of these we balked, we thought we could find an easier, softer way, but we cannot. With all the earnestness at our command, we beg of you to be fearless of growth from the very start. Some of us have tried to hold on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go absolutely. Remember that we deal with alcohol, cunning, baffling, powerful. Without help it is too much for us, but there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Half measures availed us nothing. We stood at the turning point. We asked his protection and care for complete abandon. Here are the steps we took, which are suggested as a program of recovery. 1. We admitted we were powerless over alcohol, and our lives become unmanageable. 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. 4. Made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5. Admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6. We are entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7. Humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. 8. Made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9. Made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so injure them or others. 10. Continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11. Sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Many of us exclaim, "What in order? I can't go through with it." Do not be discouraged. No one among us has been able to maintain anything like perfect adherence to these principles. We are not saints. The point is that we are willing to grow along spiritual lines. The principles we have set down are guides to progress. We claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. Our description of the alcoholic in chapter 2, the agnostic, and our personal adventures before and after make clear 3 permanent ideas. A, that we were alcoholics and cannot manage our own lives. B, that probably no human body could have relieved our alcoholism. And C, that God could and would if He saw.
Thank you, Jonah. All right.
What, you got handouts?
Huh?
Got handouts again? Handouts.
Not a handout. It's a 12-step guide
That's
that
what
I wrote.
meant. Handouts.
It's not a handout.
Oh, what is it, $6.50?
It's for people who are serious about being sponsors.
That's good.
You don't need it, man. You already know all this stuff. If you want one, you can have it.
I already have one.
That's what I thought.
The last time we did it.
You never read it, though, did you?
No.
Of course not.
What? Why should I read it? I read the big book all the.
Where do you think I got all this stuff?
As Jim sees it.
Oh, man. Good thing. It's
So
good
how was
thing.
your birthday?
Good thing you're a good friend of mine, Billy.
I know. Where did you have a good birthday, Jim?
Oh, it was wonderful. Best birthday I've had since I was a kid.
Well, your cake was good, and I usually don't eat cake.
Huh?
Your cake wasn't bad, and I usually don't eat cake.
That was a nice cake, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was very nice.
I'm having some of that for lunch. It's in there nice and cold.
Is it? In
Yeah,
the
there's
freezer?
like 50 left.
I feel bad. Worked for my brother, and I noticed that I didn't take out trash cans. And my position was to detail a car.
That's peach, I bet.
Huh?
That sounds like peaches.
Did the car, neglected the trash cans. Although I thought I was running out of time, I'm just wondering if self something hurt with him and have a bad attitude toward him deep down, and I feel
That's a
not
brother.
like a human being because I look up the projection
Look up the projection.
like, well, he's rich and I'm poor, so I must be a piece of shit
Oh.
without any feelings.
Oh.
Things were bad last week. Here's a belated birthday gift.
Oh.
Hold on to it. You never know when that may be a turn good. If I have enough faith, it will.
Definitely.
And I don't need money anymore.
I've seen that. You can have it back. You see what I left you there?
Yeah,
That's all you need to know.
thank you.
The reason I'm giving it back to you is I've already gone over it, and it's all the feel-good stuff that Marianne Williamson's come out with. And feel-good is not the 12 steps.
What is this, a CODA meeting now?
Huh?
What is this, a CODA meeting now?
Not at all. The Course in Miracles.
Marianne Williamson. That's a big author in CODA. Have you ever been to CODA?
No, but
Okay. I was in CODA.
she's the guru of Course in Miracles.
Oh.
And this guy is saying that the Course in Miracles and AA are identical.
What guy?
The master teacher, who's an alcoholic.
Okay, good.
He's from Wisconsin.
Then you read that, and after you finish reading it, you tell me what you think. Compare it with the big book and tell me what you think.
But anything out of the big book.
What?
You told me you took everything out of the big book.
Yeah, I took everything out. There's nothing left.
There's nothing left?
I took it all out.
You took it all out. You're funny. What's
like-
that, your pacemaker right here?
Yes, it is.
Hear it?
I don't need a pacemaker. I need the wax out of my ear.
Hey?
Do you have a hearing aid?
No, I don't have a hearing problem. I got wax in my ear.
But I hear a noise. Now I don't hear it anymore.
Well, it wasn't me.
I heard a beeping. Yeah, that's what I heard.
A pacemaker, huh? Billy, you too much, you know.
Me?
You remind me of
Spanky and our gang.
a few years ago. I was doing the steps at Little River, and a sponsee of mine had some little gal she was sponsoring. So her little sponsee came to her and was saying how wonderful the step meeting was. And my sponsee asked, well, who's doing it? She said, I don't know. He's some tall, old white man.
Tall, old white man.
So I said, okay, I'll agree to the tall, and I will admit that I'm white.
But you're not going to do that, you're old.
What is this old shit? I can guarantee you that most of the so-called young people around would collapse just trying to follow me around 7 days a week.
I know.
Professor!
You're a bundle of energy.
Looks different in here.
Looks like a paint job is on the way.
Yeah. Tonight.
What?
Looks like a paint job is on the way.
Tonight.
Tonight, yeah.
They'll have pizzas and sodas and all that kind of stuff. And then they'll paint.
And tomorrow morning, you will smell fresh.
Tomorrow morning I go, my meeting's on the beach.
And not lean against the walls.
No, it's funny, it usually dries by the morning.
You go to the 8 a.m. on the beach?
The 8 a.m.
16th Street?
Surprised Ivan isn't here.
I was one of the founding members of that group. That group and the Saturday group.
Huh?
You don't want to report I'm chairman of the group
Why?
now.
They're good groups down there.
Yeah.
Well,
the Saturday one more so because the Saturday one allows you to talk about anything. You know, it's not just alcohol, it's about any other problems that you might have. It's kind of like an open meeting.
You learned it all the first time.
You know? And
Oh, that's good.
The Sunday one, the first member was actually Jim Tierney.
Mm-hmm.
And then Don Smith, some girl, and me.
Mm-hmm.
And soon afterwards, Guy came. You know, big Guy?
Mm-hmm.
Teddy bear guy?
Yeah.
The guy used to hate everybody, says everybody. He used to hate everybody and everything. He was a big pussycat. Him and I used to switch from chairman and vice chairman of both those groups all the time.
Since I just started going to step meetings and big book studies and that, I find discussion meetings, for me, more like Heartbreak Hotel.
Yeah.
And I don't feel there's a lot
Well, you hear a lot of problems and you don't hear much about the solution.
Well, that's my point. I go to a meeting to learn and to be with what I call people who are looking for sobriety, not Heartbreak Hotel.
But it's good, you know, it's also good for one other reason, because when people need to air something, you know, or need to talk about something, we have sponsors, but you want to know something? I don't know anybody that really uses their sponsors.
I was at a step.
I got a couple of sponsees that use me, but that's it.
About 5 years ago, I was at a speaker meeting at the West Dixie Club, and this woman spoke incredibly well for 45 minutes on all the tools that we have.
Right.
And after the 45 minutes she opened the meeting, one young man raised his hand, he was shaky as hell, he wanted a drink, and she turned to him and said, "Young man, did you call your sponsor today?" He made every excuse, but he couldn't find his sponsor. Me being the wise ass I am, I raised my hand and said, "If I could guarantee you $10,000, do you think you might have found your sponsor today?" He didn't have to answer the question.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but that's a lot of things. You know, people don't realize what a really big life and death situation this disease holds for them.
To what length will
Too
we
many
go?
people bounce in and out. You know, and they keep doing it over and over and over and over and over again. And the more they do it, the harder it is to come back.
Oh, wow.
You know, which is bad. And now Arthur's here, so we can start the meeting.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
And you too, Arthur. I love you. How you doing?
Thank you.
Being good?
Yes,
You seen the ball game last night?
Still got your salad?
Football game. Yes.
L
Was that a
series?
Marlins game?
Yes.
You're a good man.
Marlins won it.
How much?
5-3.
You at least that.
But what's
Yeah.
this is really weird. I last went to a game 2 years ago when McGuire was in. He was one behind the National League record.
Ah, yes.
And that night he hit the longest home run to this day in the history of the stadium down there. So last night, Derek Lee gets a hold of one, and he hits it as deep as anyone but McGuire that night.
Jim.
Yeah.
The 85 convention in Montreal.
Floyd
Where?
85 in Montreal.
Yes,
Were you there?
yeah.
I thought I
I
read
get it at the
it.
reservoir,
I
and
was
then
there.
Derek Lee lost one.
50,
I
that
was
was
there
our
and
50.
and I spoke.
Huh?
I was there and I spoke.
Spoke. I thought I recognized you.
That was the end of my 5 years.
But you had more hair.
Yes, I did.
And I don't think you wore those kind of glasses either.
See, the walls used to be as color
Hey,
as
no, I think I had horn rims then.
Yeah.
That's from all the smoke. That's from all the smoke. I hate to see what my life was like.
That was my first, I mean, that was so powerful for me.
That was a real good convention. You guys probably need to get yourself a big book. You don't have one. There's a bunch up here in the cabinet.
We are not alone.
We need big bucks.
Huh?
I guess we need big bucks.
Yeah, you know anybody who bought some tapes for that weekend?
We do?
And lay out
Well,
It's a big book.
Mandy supposedly went and asked about it, and the guy said he didn't have my name, which is because I
Me too. Can you get
didn't know I was
in
going
here?
to do that particular meeting until 5 minutes before it started.
Thanks.
But I know it was recorded, and I'll get in touch with the tape guy myself.
Oh yeah, I'd love to have copies.
That's a private. It's a private guy who tapes all that stuff and sells the tapes.
I won't sell them. I just want
Gosh.
I know it was taped, so I'll get a copy of it. I had 2 other meetings to do, and that one meeting was I was the last second in place. I was the last second in place.
They're gonna do a different color? I got so much extra people.
I haven't been able to call you in a while.
What's up? All kinds of colors to do. Stripes.
The guy runs that
Yeah.
Rainbow.
Yeah.
What, 8 months long or so at the time.
That's just
Give me the rainbow.
Everything okay?
Yeah, but I like I'll still
Go up to Jersey.
You gonna do what?
I'm gonna take vacation next week. The 26th. Then I come back first of all.
Well, maybe they.
You went to the ball game.
Right, sponsor?
You got it. How about putting some books up?
Anybody want to?
I gotta get tighter. I gotta go tight again.
So. Is that what it runs on? Was it double A?
2 double A.
Jonah, nicely. Don't throw it. Nicely.
Jim, what are we on today?
It's the second session. We're going to be talking about sponsorship, the mythology of sponsorship.
Mythology.
Yeah, I'm going to have to rob you of some of your deeper held beliefs.
What's that?
I don't know yet. We'll find out.
Jim, I guess
I
you're
always
talking
am
about spiritual advisors, are you not?
Spiritual advisors, yes. They're in the big book.
And their proteges.
I suspect most of them wore turnaround collars, though.
I thought there was no sponsorship at the beginning.
There isn't.
Everybody sponsored everybody.
That's right,
else.
exactly what happened.
And
They
we
did
went
have,
through the 6
they had,
steps of the
they had spiritual advisors, which I take it, in most cases, were men of the cloth.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Priests. Rabbis.
So a group that does that is not going to last. They'll be gone. That's the way it works. That's our police force is old man alcohol himself and the disease. Because when we begin to violate these spiritual principles, We lose our spiritual edge and the group dies. And I've seen that happen a lot of times. Answer your question, Linda? Okay. All right, let's see. There was be no professional class of therapy. Aha. That's another really interesting one, because and today there are a lot of folks who come in here and they look around and they say, wow, the thing I better do is get myself a ticket to become a counselor, and I can really carry the message that way. Generally, that turns out to be a serious problem, because if we're hired by someone to carry their message and we're being paid to carry their message, it's hard to keep that separated from our 12-step work, where we're carrying God's message and where we have no agenda, where we're leaving the results up to Him. And a lot of people who try to do that find that they have serious difficulty doing it. Our 12-step work is done without expectation of any return whatsoever. A professional class of therapists, of course, would be people who charged for their services, and would be, if AA were to sanction such a thing, you can imagine we have a nice plaque, you know, Alcoholics Anonymous, Jim Brand, professional AA therapist, and hang it up on the wall. And at that point, I'd be able to start charging a whole bunch of money. I mean, some of these people are getting like $200 an hour now. I'd be cheap. I'd just do it for $100 an hour. Some guy down Alvarado asked me the other day, said, "You charge for your 12-step work?" I said, "No, gosh, no. Why did you ask me that?" "Oh, I don't know. You just look like you probably did." This is the same guy who said, "It's only a book." So I guess he got a jaundiced view of us. All right, let's go on here now. Oh, by the way, in California, there's a kind of unique bunch of people out there. They call themselves interveners. You ever heard of that? And they do this professionally. Most of them claim to be members of AA. And what they do is, you're the family of an alcoholic, and you're at wit's end, and you don't know what to do. And so you've heard from your somebody at the office or somebody in your family that this wonderful intervener is over here. So you get in touch with him or her, and they come to your house. The alcoholic, of course, can't be there. And then they sit there and they tell you how they're going to intervene and get this drunk straightened out. And then they want money up front. Now, it used to be that the money up front was only $800 or $1,000. I understand they're now up in the $2,500 range. They get their money up front, and then what they do is they set it up so that the alcoholic is going to be in a place where he or she can't escape. And the intervener will be there, and members of the family, and they will confront this poor person. But that's not the end of it, because the intervener has established ties with various treatment centers. So they get a bounty. So as soon as they capture this poor drunk, they haul him off to a treatment center. And then the intervener gets paid by the treatment center as well. So there are a lot of people out there making a good living doing that. I suspect that one of these days they're going to be burning in hell. That may be a little rough. There would be no fees or dues. Our expenses were to be met by our own voluntary contributions. We know where that came from. It was to be the least possible organization, even in our service centers. And of course, you know, there's a lot of people don't bother to find out how AA is organized, because it is organized in a kind of a way. Because we got New York up here, and we got General Service Office, and then the delegates go up there, and they get to form a debating society for 2 years. And then under the General Service Office, we have the areas, and the areas take in a pretty large chunk of property. And then underneath the areas, we have districts. And the districts are the next step above groups. So you got the groups, you got the district, you got the area, and then you got general service office. And then you say, but whoa, wait a second, what about our central office? What about, what do they call it? The intergroup. What about intergroup? Intergroup is not in the organization chart of AA. It is, the intergroups are formed by the groups within that area and not, or within that geographic area, and many geographic areas don't have any intergroup at all. And then there's another very strange thing that if you, when you see how this thing's organized, if you go to the state convention is not an AA function. It can't be, because it involves going across district and area lines, and it is not sponsored by AA. It is a part of what the intergroups put together within the state. And so many times when you go, you're going to find, for example, they're charging me a ton of money to get into a state convention. And you say, well, why? You know, why can't I just go here and listen to these people come and tell their stories? Why do I have to pay money to hear them? But I can understand paying money to stay in a hotel, but why do I have to pay entrance fee to get into an AA function? Doesn't that violate the traditions? Well, it doesn't, because the traditions don't apply there. Now, you do have district and area conferences, and of course those are AA functions. So it's kind of interesting to see how this all comes together, and somehow or another it just works. And you know why it works is because there are a certain number of people who are willing to sacrifice their time and their effort and really put a lot of work and effort and time into these things to make them work. And it's almost always the same people year after year after year who do this. But the job gets done. So we don't have this kind of organization that anybody else would be able to consider would work at all. Let's see. Our public relations were to be based upon attraction rather than promotion. You know, we have to understand what this is saying. A lot of people talk about attraction, not promotion, within our groups. And in talking about, let's say, our 12-step work, or in some way of trying to apply this to the things that we do just but among ourselves. This applies only to our public relations. And that means relations with the public, and it refers specifically to the media, but of course it could also be in any public gathering. We do not advertise, nor do we push AA. We let our works speak for themselves. And this, of course, is pretty close to our third step prayer, isn't it? We ask God to make examples of us to people we would help, so that they will see His power and His love and His way of life working in and through us. It was decided that all members ought to be anonymous at the level of press, radio, TV, and films, and in no circumstances should we give endorsements, make alliances, or enter public controversies. Now you can see where all of the traditions are incorporated in that paragraph. So and this is nice to know, because if you want to review your tradition, it doesn't give the numbers here, but this one paragraph takes all the traditions, puts them in a highly readable form, and lets them, and shows how they all work together. There's one thing I'd like to mention to you. If you look at the 12 tradition, I believe it's being misread by a lot of people. That anonymity is the spiritual foundation of all our traditions, ever reminding us to place principles before personalities. Now, if we read in the 12 and 12, and also Language of the Heart, because Bill wrote a number of articles about this, we find that anonymity in the 12 tradition has to do with self-sacrifice. It has to do with humility. It has to do with our being willing to sacrifice our normal desire for notoriety and acclaim and being recognized as some kind of a wonderful person, or being recognized as the leader of something or other. You know, we have this power-driving sense that we came in with, most of us. So what it means is that we're sacrificing all of that for the good of the fellowship. And it goes right back to the first tradition, that the unity of our fellowship is determinative of our own ability to recover. And so when we think of the 12 tradition, let's not think in terms of fear. Let's not think in terms of the fear of discovery. Let's not think that the 12 tradition is there because it was decided that we had to protect ourselves from anybody knowing that we were drunks. That was not the purpose of it. The purpose of it was, as Bill so clearly stated in his writings, that we practice humility and that we be willing to sacrifice our normal desire for notoriety and acclaim for the good of the fellowship. Any questions about that?
Yeah, I have a question. I'm probably indoctrinated to that, and I don't necessarily believe. First of all, I think that a slip or a relapse has a lot of different factors in it. Among them might be hungry and you want to retire. But let's talk about secrets. Secrets are pretty important. If I steal $5 off you and I don't tell you, the next thing I might do is pick up a drink or a drug. I think that God works through people and in these rooms. And I think that if somebody comes in these rooms feeling bad, guilty, whatever, there's something that he or she might have done, there's no harm in sharing that, telling the people in the room, and getting it a little bit lessened. I do believe that we should tell our sponsors or spiritual advisors or proteges or whatever you call them also, but the rooms are pretty important for a lot of different kind of people, and a lot of different people think differently. I know I've done a couple of, and that's the reason for the fourth step. You know, I've done more than one fourth and fifth step, but things have come up with me when I'm sharing, and I just blurt it out because I don't want to do another fifth step with somebody just for this one thing that I've remembered that's come up from my past. And
Okay.
It works. It works for me. And, you know, it might not work for somebody else.
I'll tell you I'm glad you brought that up, because what they found when they were first trying to put together a cogent program that would work based on the 6 steps of the Oxford group, they found that those steps were woefully inadequate in many respects, but most especially what you brought up. That is what you could call the afterlife. You've worked the steps. The Oxford people thought that once you had done that you had arrived at some kind of a place of perfection. And so the only thing that their steps provided for from there on was that you carry this message, in effect to become an apostle. Our guys found that wasn't true at all, that because the world and its people would continue to threaten them, and threat was translating, of course, automatically back into recurrence of these defects, that they had to have a way of dealing with that on a daily basis as it came up. Ergo, the 10th step. And it is in the 10th step, of course, that what you're talking about is, if we're using the 10th step, we will have inventoried our dishonesty. Let's say I stole $5. I've inventoried that. I've talked to somebody about it, and I've asked God to help me with my dishonesty. And if I hurt somebody by taking that $5, I'm going to make amends right away. So the 10th step provides the vehicle in the big book for doing what you're talking about. And the people who follow that, and of course, if we miss during the day, then we're going to pick that up in the 11th step at night. And again, it tells us the same thing. we can't keep something to ourselves that we need to discuss with another person at once. But the basic idea of the big book had nothing whatever to do with what we have today, where everybody, there are 100,000 groups, and if you want to spill something, all you got to do is find the nearest meeting. The people who are getting this big book didn't have any meetings to go to. There were no groups. And so what they provided here was a way in which somebody who was out there in Cucamonga would be able to achieve the same thing that you're talking about, to be set free from the effects of the recurrence of these defects. And that's why it doesn't specify that you're going to talk about this with a sponsor or a member of AA or anybody else, but it is necessary to talk to somebody about it. But the bottom line is we take that immediately to God, and we make amends quickly we harm somebody. So we have developed over the years with the group idea, and heck, if it works for you and the people you sponsor to bring all this stuff out the minute it happens and say it in a group, and fine, that's fine with me. What I'm suggesting here, and I think we've talked about this before, is that we have a methodology which is set out in the big book, which does work, and has worked for millions. So I try to stick as close to that as I can. On the other hand, anybody in this workshop should feel absolutely free to share their own experience, because you never know when it's going to help somebody else here. So this is by no means meant to create exclusivity, but what we're talking about here is what the big book says and what over the years has proven to work. It does not mean that other things won't. The concern I have is if we go too far with this, if you take this and carry it out too far, what happens is the reliance becomes on the group, and sharing and spilling our stuff in group, rather than reliance upon God, rather than reliance upon what the 10th step tells us to do. And I personally feel that's very dangerous, because I don't think it is nearly as effective as the 10th step. Yep? Yes. Make sense? Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Jim, I think the whole thing...
Yep? Yes. Make sense? Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Jim, I think the whole thing about the mythology part, where you're only sick as your secrets, and 90 and 90, and even the chip system, what you're up here saying is follow the outline on the book, and with all the mythology in the rooms.
I see that as basically a human solution. I guess that's what I'm really saying. And my experience tells me that human solutions which are not followed up with the we need to. I see. Yep. Yes. Makes sense? Anyone else? Yes.
Yeah, Jim, I think the whole thing about the mythology part, where you're only sick as your secrets, and 90 and 90, even say that, come out and say, and not do the work, the outline, then we're not turning our will and our lives over to the God as we understand Him.
Right, I see that as basically a human solution. I guess that's what I'm really saying. And my experience tells me that human solutions which are not followed up with the spiritual solution seldom work. And so what we're trying to do here is to find out what we can depend upon working, and that's what I'm trying to share with you and to pass on to you, because this has been my experience. Now there's another thing which doesn't appear in the big book, this stuff about you can't have a relationship for a year. Of course, that's not in the book, and as a matter of fact, that idea is directly contrary to the Big Book. Because the Big Book discusses at length the problem of relationships, of course, and we have a section, the 4-step, where we're going to inventory our sex relations. And nowhere in any sense does it suggest that we must curtail our sexual activities arbitrarily for any length of time. As a matter of fact, the whole chapter, The Family Afterward, presupposes that we have people who are, one of whom is recovering, and they're residing in connubial bliss, so to speak. There is a sex relationship which existed before sobriety, and it continues to exist afterwards. There are, however, sponsors who have taken this 1-year thing to mean that people who are married are to be separated for a year. And that has, if you think that's too far-fetched, it's not. I've seen it happen several times, and it's a tragedy, because wives separated from husbands and children, or husbands separated from wives and children, without any spiritual merit to this whatsoever. None. You see, the Big Book is always consistent, and it tells us that there is a solution for our spiritual problems, but that solution doesn't have anything to do with staying away from, or running away from, the idea of having a sex relationship. Quite the contrary, Big Book assumes that sex is a natural part of our daily living. It's something which many people find to be a powerful and constructive force in their lives. Therefore, the Big Book tells us that our sex powers are God-given and therefore good. And just a second. They are not to be used lightly or selfishly. But on the other hand, we're not to hate or loathe them either. In other words, what it's telling us is that we in Alcoholics Anonymous